I just sit in my chair, 9 to 5, whether I have something to write or not. It's the discipline. You sit in the chair and you write.
Now, on a happier note, on, on a happy,
Nobody's ever accused me of having happy notes. I just thought you should know that.
hello, today's conversation is with Jeff Schechter. Jeff is a prolific TV and movie writer. His work includes Bloodsport 2, Brink, Beethoven's Third, Care Bears, The Hunters, Stitches, everything from kids' movies, family movies, comedies, right the way through to sci-fi, and it's a very interesting range of work. In the conversation, Jeff shares some advice for younger artists, creatives, people who may feel blocked. We talk about writer's block and how, as a professional writer, he deals with that. He shares some ideas about structure and also defining success. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Over to Jeff Schechter. Jeff, thank you very much for making the time today. I really appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure.
I want to ask some questions about creativity. We're just coming to the end of a year of serious change and major lockdown. So we're now in April 2020. Obviously, Los Angeles is out of the lockdown for the most part. Britain's just coming out around today, bit by bit. What do you say to the younger people who are planning to go to drama school or dance school or music school this time last year, or were starting off doing their own productions and suddenly everything got thrown out and the whole thing was sidelined, and still there's going to be trouble for people getting back on track? What kind of things might you advise them?
So it's funny, like if we would have had this conversation when, in the benefit of hindsight, right, have this conversation when things were first shutting down, and you said, what would you advise young people facing an uncertain, when we don't know when things will get back to normal, what do you advise them to do during this period of time? It would have been, work on your craft, start networking, use this as an opportunity to expand your possibilities, so that when things open up, and they will open up, you're better situated than you were before things shut down, right? So it's not brilliant advice, but it's reasonable advice. So now that we're coming out of it, and it's like, okay, if people feel like, okay, I've been derailed, and it's young people, you've been derailed, you can just jump back in. It's because it's not like it just happened to you and didn't happen to everybody. Everybody's at the same disadvantage. So it's just like it's like end game, for Avengers, Thanos snapped his fingers and we all blipped for a year, and now we're coming back. So everybody blipped at the same time. So you just come back and you pick it up. Hopefully, I don't think for the vast majority of people too much damage was done. It's just it'll be a lost year of making contacts and making connections. And if you stuck with it, you might actually have a bit of an advantage, because maybe this year kind of culled the herd. Some people who were kind of enthusiastic about doing it, and then this happens and they throw up their hands and it's like, forget it, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go into my dad's shoe store or whatever.
Right.
Right. So for it might have created some more additional opportunities.
It's a great point. In some ways, it may be like a catapult, in that the tension was building and the tension was building and the tension was building. And then suddenly there was just this rush of action, rush of productions, rush of people waiting to get studying and get moving again.
Yeah, for sure. There's been a backlog of projects and materials waiting for production to open up again. And production has started really, wish I knew what the numbers were, but my impression from everybody that I'm talking to is that it's come roaring back. I don't know if it's quite at pre-pandemic production numbers, but if not, it's pretty close. I know there are certain places you can go where you just can't like LA, you can barely find any studio space. Vancouver, you can't find studio space. Toronto, you can't find studio space. You can't find crews. Everybody's booked. So it's not a bad time in terms of that.
Yeah. And certainly the indie film market in LA is just exploding at the moment. More and more stuff is suddenly happening, which I think is great. But what about the people who have got limited resources, who want to put stuff on but don't necessarily have the budget or don't have the cameras or whatever it happens to be? What might you advise to someone who's thinking, okay, this is what I want to do, but I haven't got let's say, the physical means to do it?
Mhm. Um, I would tell them to quit right now and do something else, because everybody's got a film studio,
Right.
in their pocket, right? You need nothing between YouTube and Vimeo, and there's no barrier to entry. A million years ago when I was getting started, you had to you still need people to do it with, right? But you had to rent the camera, you needed editing equipment. It's like everybody can shoot something now, everybody can edit something now. Yeah, sure, you got to go round up some actors. That just means sit down at the computer and post something on a board somewhere, and wait for the people begging you to be in your project comes in, because they will beg you to be in your project.
Right.
So it's like, if somebody legitimately feels like, I just don't have the means, then then you don't have the means, and do something else. Because for every, let's say there's it's such a horrible numbers game, meaning that
Mm.
for every one person who breaks through, there were 1,000 people who didn't, and for every 1,000 people who didn't break through, there were 10,000 people, who kind of wanted to do it but didn't quite pull it together, to do it. So it's like, if you want to be in with that 10,000 people who have self-doubt and feel like, well, I don't have the resources, those aren't the people you're competing with. You're competing against the 1,000 people who got off their backsides and decided to try to do something. And even them, the vast majority won't make it, right? But it's the lottery ticket. Not that it's, I mean, I guess it is a little bit like making it in the business. There, you need skill and timing and personality and all that stuff.
Mm.
But there is a little bit of sense of like, oh, I won the lottery. But you can stack the deck a bit in your
Right.
favor. But for sure, if it's like you don't feel you can make it, then because of lack of resources, then you're not thinking clearly, and you should get out now. Don't waste any more of your time. You know.
Which is great advice.
I mean, I hate to be,
No.
I really hate to be that guy. I mean, I
Why?
probably,
What's wrong with it?
I don't know.
That's
Well, because
fine.
there was a period in my time of my life where I was doing like a lot of like story consulting for, well, studios for sure, but for
Mm.
individuals as well. And I was always the guy, who was just kind of I was like the cold bucket of water,
Okay.
so yeah, somebody goes, yeah, I'm 73 years old and I've never written anything before, and I'm thinking about trying to get into TV writing. And I'm like, don't, it's never going to happen. It's just never going to happen. Right. I want to come to Hollywood. I'm going to sell my trucking business in Illinois and move to Hollywood to pursue this. No, please don't. It's just not going to happen. So I was always that guy, rather than, hey, follow your dreams. I don't care how
Right.
old you are.
So
So I
actually,
was always trying to be more of a realist.
and on that question of being a realist, at what point should someone quit, in your thoughts? Like, let's say someone actor, writer, who's done some work over the years, considers themselves an actor, writer, or director, whatever,
Hmm.
may love the craft, but has, let's say, they're sort of semi-professional. Sometimes they're making their living from it, sometimes they aren't. But at what time does someone just knock it on the head
Yeah.
in terms of what you see as
It's hard.
realistic?
Everybody's different,
Mm.
right? So I don't know that there's one hard and fast set rule for it. I mean, I think my attitude has been, it depends on your age, right? If
Mm.
you're 20, like I was when I came out to California, I was 24 and I
Right.
wanted to be a writer, right? So I'd written like 2 scripts back in New York, and I moved out to California, and but I felt like, okay, I had a lot of runway in front of me. I could take 10 years and struggle to try to be a successful writer. And I could always support myself. I was working in a computer store and managing a karate studio and working in industrial video. I always had a job. I always supported myself. And I dedicated myself to writing a little bit before I went to work, and then after I went to work. So I basically was, I always describe myself, I'm a writer who just happens to be managing a computer store right now,
Right.
for money. So life will be I think the big deciding factor. If you've got you got a husband or a wife or a family that you have to support, and you're holding on to this, this goal of trying to make it as an actor or as a writer, and you're pushing 40 and it hasn't quite happened yet, and you're sacrificing, I don't want to say sacrificing your life, but you're sacrificing living because you haven't applied yourself to some other job, and money's always a hassle and a strain and a struggle, and you're ruining relationships because of chasing it down. It might be time to reconsider. And if you're a writer, you're in luck because you can always write. I mean, if you're wanting to be a dancer or a director or an actor, or something where you need other people to pull a trigger for you, in order for you to do what you do, then it's tougher. But a writer, you go, okay, look, I gave it 10 years. It didn't pan out. I'm not giving up on writing. I'm just going to shift my focus to something where I can sleep a little bit better at night, knowing I'm supporting my family, and I will dedicate myself, as the most ardent hobbyist,
right,
to writing. Right. And so writing has always had that advantage, is that, you could do it, in your underwear at 3 a.m, and, and create something wonderful. Dancers and actors, it's a lot harder.
I mean, interestingly, there are now people who, it's quite easy at the weekends to become a filmmaker hobbyist and do it much like anything else, get the permits, raise the budget, do some stuff, set it up, and then work that. I mean, there's a lot that can be done around the day job. But in terms of runway and realism, and I always found I don't know, like the sadness or the poignancy of being in the back of an Uber in LA, like sort of like some gray hair, like, oh, nothing wrong with gray hair guys or white hair guys. Here's my album, here's my script, passing it into the, it's different, but like you're not driving an Uber, like and handing the script into the passenger's seat. Again, not there's anything wrong with it, but at what point someone say, okay, let's live life.
At a point where it's like, it's, like there's kind of this little bit of a standard for like, like what are you willing to say out loud? So if you're not willing to say this a comment out loud in front of a judge, then you probably shouldn't say it, that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's the same thing, right? With the career, it's like if you're feeling awkward saying, I want to be a dancer, and you're feeling awkward about it because you've been saying it for 15 years and now you're 42, and, or, what I mean? It's right. Like if people have a pretty good internal clock or barometer for, it's a matter of listening to the little voice, and there's no shame in it. That the problem is like, I can't quit, right. Well, you also can't hold on past the point where it's logical or sensible or healthy, to hold on.
And it's ultimately personal choices. Someone's got to choose what they want from their life.
Right. Yeah.
So I want to thank you for that. Now, on a happier note,
nobody's ever accused me of having happy notes. I just thought you should know that.
I just saw Brink.
Did you?
Yes. Because when I first met you at William Morris, there was the Jewish Entertainment Network evening. You were talking about Brink. You were like, see Brink. So just sorry, it's on Disney Plus. Really enjoyed it. It was fun. It was fun. Like it was firstly like seeing California. I got no idea how you managed to cast that thing or insure it when you had the leads doing backflips on roller skates and going down a hill, and they're all doing their own stunts.
I was not involved in that aspect of the of production. I was just a lowly writer, but the director, a guy named Greg Beeman, just did a fantastic job. And out of like all the things that I've written that other people have directed, Greg was probably the most respectful of the material, like changed nothing, invited me to set as much as I wanted to be there, which wasn't, I couldn't be there quite too much just because they were shooting all over LA and I had other gigs going on. So it's like couldn't just sort of be there. But he was very open and did a great job with the cast. And yeah, so I don't know how they got the insurance on it, but it was like the
It was
third
fun.
Disney Channel original movie. So it's a kind of a cult hit in the world. I will often go to a meeting if there's somebody of a particular age. Basically, it's men in their late 20s, early 30s who likely saw Brink when they were kids.
Right.
So if somebody says to me, it just shows you where my massive ego lies. But they'll say, "Oh, so what have you worked on?" I say, "Well, I wrote your favorite Disney Channel movie." And they're like, "Oh, which one was that?" I went, "Well, what's your favorite?" They went, "Brink." I went, "Yep." You wrote Brink?
That's quite like a high stakes gambit, though. They might say
I'm telling you,
Beauty and the Beast, don't they?
Brink, for reasons I don't understand, I mean, I kind of get it. It's a sweet, nice movie. It's fun. It's funny, but it's like it just meant a lot to a whole lot of people of a particular age. When I did Stitchers, and we cast the very wonderful Kyle Harris as the male lead in Stitchers, who's a gentleman of the right age. He was from New York. He comes out to LA, and I'm meeting him for the first time, on our big, super exotic lab set for Stitchers. It's going to be his home.
Where was that shot? Was that?
It was shot in Santa Clarita. There was a studio up in Santa Clarita here, so it shot basically LA. So we're taking him onto this elaborate set, which is like his home, which we was hoping for many seasons. It was 3 seasons, so it's pretty long. And so, he shows up, and I go, "Hey, Kyle, it's nice to meet you. I'm Jeff Schechter." He goes, "You wrote Brink." I'm going, "Yeah, but I also wrote Stitchers, which you are a star of." But it was like, that's all he could talk about was Brink, and how much he loved Brink, and how much it meant to him. And so Brink's this.
I guess it captures an age of the rollerbladers, the Venice Beach. By the way, like the kind of the whole thing, the excitement of it, and the school drama, but there's no musical involved, in this.
Yeah. It's a nice. I'm very, very proud of having that on my resume. It's just only because my goal has always been to create stuff that means something to somebody besides me. And Brink meant a lot to a lot of people, so that's very rewarding for me.
It's wonderful. And so you went from Brink. I mean, I've been watching some of your back catalog. So I watched.
How you enjoying the Care Bears?
Care Bears I haven't seen.
Oh, you're missing out.
Okay, but I watched Beethoven 2.
Okay, I didn't write that one.
Sorry,
I wrote 3. Beethoven's 3rd.
Oh my God. I watched the wrong one.
That's okay. How was Beethoven 2? No, it's very good. It was Charles Grodin.
But hang on a sec. No, the one it must have been 3 then. I watched your name was on the screen.
It's 3 with the motorhome, the camper.
With the motorhome, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's 3. That's Beethoven's
and the 2 guys with the concrete over the car. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So
Beethoven's 3rd.
Numbers. Beethoven's 3rd. So I sat down at the beginning thinking, okay, it's a kids' film. I'm watching a kids' film, and there's a dog, and there's a motorhome. Then the next thing I knew is the final credits were rolling, and I loved it. I was just like lost in it.
Well, thank you. It's basically loosely based on my wife telling me horror stories of a camping trip she had, with her family. So there's a lot of my wife goes, "Yeah, I inspired that," and she did.
It's fun. And what I was wondering is, when you're writing comedy, when you've been working on the fun stuff over the years, what happens when you wake up and think, right, I'm not in the mood, or something's going on politically you're not happy with, or maybe like a family thing, and obviously there is the professionalism of got to show up and do the job, but what happens? Like, do you have strategies? Is it not an issue? Do you always find, right, sit down at the desk, on comes the funny? How's it work for you?
It's, sometimes I learned really early on when I was like just a baby writer, and I got to LA in '84. I worked at a computer store that was sort of down the block from me. It was on Santa Monica Boulevard and Beverly Glen. Those who know old LA from that time, was a store called Personal Support Computers.
Right.
So I worked there as a salesman for a year, and then as a manager for a year, and we catered to writers and performers. Right, they would come in, and I was kind of the screenplay software guy. Back then, it was like Scripter and
Okay.
Word on old Epson QX10 computers. It's like
Right.
prehistoric. But one of the writers who came in for a computer, that I helped get set up, was a woman named Diane Thomas, who wrote "Romancing the Stone," which is a fantastic story of like working as a waitress, and she's got somebody else. I think the story is she's working with somebody who knows Michael Douglas, so gives Michael Douglas, the friend of Diane, gives Michael Douglas the script, and he loves it. Now suddenly, she's got a movie made, and she sadly died in a car accident on PCH very young, shortly after I met her. But she was super disciplined, so I learned from her. She's like, I just sit in my chair 9 to 5, whether I have something to write or not. It's the discipline. You sit in your chair and you write. So I learned early on, that discipline. I also learned from when I was 16, I read a book called The Making of the Trouble with Tribbles, written by a fantastic writer and a really nice guy named David Gerrold, who was a writer on the original Star Trek and went on to write all sorts of stuff. And in his book, he just talked about working quickly, just banging stuff out. Like he would write, pages and pages and pages a day. So between those two sort of disciplines at an impressionable age for me, I just had the discipline, like, I just can't afford, writer's block. If I'm in the middle of a project, then I'll sit and I'll just power through it and try to figure out I'll write something knowing that I'll just rewrite it. But sometimes the act of writing will generate more writing. But if I'm between projects, I'm like, I'm not sure what to work on. That's where it's harder to say, well, do I really want to start the process of writing something right now, if I'm not feeling it. But once I'm feeling it, and particularly when I have a deadline, I'm like, okay, I just, this is the discipline. This is the job.
And then it happens.
So I was hired once to write a 2-part science fiction miniseries. I think it got the horrendously on the nose title called Exploding Sun. But anyway, so I was hired to write it was a 2-part miniseries, so 4 hours. And they said, and you got 6 weeks to do it. I'm like, oh God, I guess 6 weeks. And it was right before Passover.
Right.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna lose 10 days right there. And I didn't know how to say no because it was a lot of money, but I didn't know how to say yes because it was a lot of work. But then I sat down and I said, okay, so it's 4 hours. Let's be generous. We'll say each script's gonna be 110 pages. So that's 220 pages. And I know that I can write 10 pages a day in my spare time. It's just from years of discipline, right? So I go, okay, so that's
what do you mean by your spare? What do you mean by your spare time? Just
meaning
like
I can
morning.
do 10, I can do 10 pages a day without breaking a sweat.
Okay.
I can do 10 pages a day in 3 hours. It's just the way I work. So I'm going, okay, so it's 220 pages. That's 22 days. Now I'm breaking out the calendar and going, okay, I got 6 work weeks. That's 30 days,
Okay.
because 5 days, and then I always work, a day or two on the weekend. So let's say it's 30 days, for 220, it's like, wait a minute. I have an extra week. I got more time than I need. And it was like, it was so liberating to actually like know what you can do and then get granular with the actual assignment and go, okay. And then I would set limits for myself and say, okay, I'm not leaving. And I knew if I did 12 pages on Tuesday, I said, okay, I could do 8 pages on Wednesday and know that I'm still okay. But let me try to do 10 pages also.
What about rewrite time? Sorry. on your record.
Yeah, no, it's okay. No, and that's factoring in. Well, I had 6 weeks to deliver my first drafts, right? So, so, and then there was an extra couple of weeks after that for the rewriting, right? So, so it was just like, so it went from being this like crushing, how am I ever going to do this, to, oh, I got more than enough time.
What's your writing schedule? How many hours a day do you sit down for at any one time in terms of the creativity flowing?
Yeah. You know what? I'm this toxic combination of insomniac and workaholic. So, like literally this morning I was at my desk by 4:30 a.m.
Okay.
And I won't be leaving my desk until 5. I tend to get up and go make dinner. I enjoy cooking, so I cook dinner for my wife and myself. I just work all hours. It's if I'll get into bed, and write until like I'm hallucinating. So I don't have a set schedule. Unlike Diane Thomas, who was very adamant, 9 to 5. So nobody should look at what I'm saying as this is the perfect formula for
no, it's what works for you.
But I'm saying, right. This is not representing a work-life balance. I've got 4 kids, but they're all out of the house now. So, and when they were younger and needed more daddy attention, I was a very attentive father. So I just punted the extra hours I needed to do till the end of the day, or got up, a little bit earlier, or did it when they were in school. So I just kind of wrote when I could. It's just, it helps when you love doing it,
Right.
so it doesn't feel like a grind.
Right.
So it's like, I know there are times where I write something that I really like, and I just can't wait to look at it the next day and play with it some more. It's like, it's like building, your own favorite toy that you then sell to somebody, and you watch them hit it with a hammer.
But at least you got the money. Everything's got its own price. Everything's got a price.
I say, you know what? If like you could be the greatest cabinet maker in the world, and you sell it to somebody, and then they're going to paint it hot pink. And you know what? If you don't want your cabinets painted hot pink, don't sell your cabinets.
Simple as that.
Simple as that.
Exactly. It's very interesting seeing the breadth of the stuff you've done going, and I wonder how you get from rollerblading and a dog on a motorhome through to international museum thieves, or I'm not sure what you call them, with the hunters, and then hacking dead people's memories in Stitches. Right. It's quite broad. And by the way, I love the dialogue in Stitches.
Thank you.
The speed of it, and it works so well with the casting, with the lead, and just I think the thoughtfulness and the technicality and the pace and the rhythm of it. So it's kind of very, very watchable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I don't know. Stitches, as far as this series goes, I had to back off from the original. The original pilot that I wrote was probably, at the time it was my favorite pilot. I've got others that I'm very fond of now. But I kind of went out of my way on that pilot to do something different with the use of language, which did carry over, into Stitchers, though it became dialogue-wise became a little bit more standard. But you're right, there was a lot of, we always were pushing the pace, bam, 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 bam. I don't want people thinking about responses. I wanted to live in a world where everybody had kind of the right thing to say very quickly in a very arch kind of manner. But the original pilot for Stitchers was, and continues to be, just a really fun read. It's sort of the back and forth, and and it's like a verbal chess game, even with people who've just met each other. Sort of like poking and prodding and stuff like that. So I was very proud of the language of that. But you're not wrong. If you look at my resume, I've got everything from, Care Bears to Bloodsport 2, to Stitchers to, Dennis the Menace 2, it's like, it's all over the map. The super secret weapon, frankly, is I'm a monster structuralist, right? I have a sort of a system of story development that I use that I just replicate over and over and over again. I never reinvent the wheel unless I have to. Now the dialogue might be different, and the characters and the settings, and I swing for the fences with a lot of the high concepts, like hacking the memories of the dead, things like that.
Where did that come from? Was that just your?
That was, well, the original thing of that was Stitches was going to be going into surveillance videos.
Okay.
This idea that every picture that everybody takes, is uploaded to the cloud, right? Everybody sends every picture. So like if you're at the base of the Eiffel Tower on, Monday, April 12th at 10:10 Pacific time, right? So you're there, assuming we're not in lockdown, you're there with a couple of thousand other people who are also taking pictures at the base of the Eiffel Tower, and they're all being loaded to the interwebs.
Right.
So what if there's a government agency that's pulling all those time-stamped pictures together and making a 3D walkthrough, of that thing, because a crime happened at the base of the Eiffel Tower. So somebody caught something on their cameras, or the security cameras that are there, or the surveillance cam, right? So the government agency that has access to all this photographic information, and then they build a 3D environment, and then they plug somebody's consciousness into that 3D environment to solve these crimes. So that was the original idea. And then but then Person of Interest was coming out around that same time. And that was like a computer working up an algorithm for where crimes might be. And so I kind of wanted to get away from like sort of a computer generated version of it.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one of the producers, who was interested in the project. And he was like, well, yeah, this feels like it might be too close to, some of this other stuff, surveillance video stuff. Feel like Eagle Eye was a movie, right? Yeah, so surveillance video feels a little done, but I've always wanted to figure out how to tell a story about going into the memories of the dead. I went, oh, that's so much better. So I wish I could take full credit for it.
No, but it's the creative process. It's the creative process.
Yeah.
And
but anyway, but to go back to answer the question though, so I use this structure that it's the same structure I wrote. This is not a plug for my book because I make 12 cents for every copy that's sold. So
plug it. No, it's great.
Doesn't bother me. I wrote a book called My Story Can Beat Up Yours, and here it is now. No, I don't actually have a copy here. And it's the exact same storytelling formula that I've used literally for everything. To me, it's like it's the universal field theory of storytelling, and it's just a very replicable structure. And I'm telling you, Brink and Care Bears and Bloodsport 2 and Stitchers and The Hunters and everything that I've written since 1989 has used this exact same structure. So I just fall back on it. It's great. You never get, you might be, oh, my dialogue sucks, but you're not lost as far as telling your story goes.
Do you spend a long time in advance structuring it before you write anything?
Yeah, for now, because I've been living with this for so long, it's really easy for me. I just pull up my templates and just bang, 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 bang. I can knock out a structured story, really quickly. So I don't spend a long time, but I spend the right amount of time.
Right.
And I tell people, I go, look, it's better you should spend, 6 months coming up with a really good structure for your story rather than spending 6 months writing something that's going to just fall apart. Right. Yeah. So finally, 8 months in, now you've got your well-structured story and your finished product, as compared to you spent 6 months writing a story that didn't have a chance of holding up in the first place, and now you got to start all over again.
And then there's no way of getting writer's block because you've structured it.
Yeah, you can still get writer's block. It's like I can't come up with a good. Yeah, I know that this is the point where the main character, realizes that they now have to take the fight to the bad guy. In whatever that means. That could be a love story. It doesn't have to be, we're not talking, it doesn't have to be John Wick, but it could be in a love story. What does taking the fight to the bad guy mean in a love story? So, but you might not have a good idea for it. So write your bad idea. Say, okay, what's the absolute crap idea the first idea that came to my mind. Oh, he goes to his warehouse and breaks the door and starts shooting everything up. And okay, so just write it. I don't care if it sucks. You're going to rewrite it anyway. At least
Right.
you wrote something, right? You go to bed that night going, yeah, I wrote it, rather than you sat there going, oh, it's terrible. You don't have any good ideas.
Yeah. And then finally, any advice, I think, to that you would give to the artist who is maybe fixated on success and what it
Mhm.
means to be successful as an artist. Obviously, one gauge is the bank account. What would you say to the artists who, again, are sort of still hitting the brick wall, the ones who are dealing with the self-judgment and
Mhm.
asking those questions? The passion is
Right.
still going, the fire's still alive, but there is the issue of how we frame it.
Success in this business is a rare quantity. I guess let's go with quantity. I wish I could tell you every time that, like I felt like I spiked the football and, and was like, oh, thank God I don't have to worry anymore. I'm now a success. And then like a year or two goes by and goes, nope, still got to hustle as hard as I ever did. I mean, I sold a screenplay in 1995 for, it was the classic, front page of Variety, $1 million screenplay sale, spec script. And I was like, oh, I made it. I'm done. And I had been working for years before, but like prior to that, I was doing kids films and with
Yeah,
earning a fine living. But this was like the big thing, right? This was, I made it. The name of the screenplay was called Stanley's Cup, and the headline in Variety was "Schechter's Cup runneth over," right?
beautiful.
Very beautiful, right? So yeah, as Variety is wont to do with their clever headlines. So I remember going, oh, I made it. And then it was like I got, like one or two things just sort of handed to me afterwards. But then the film never got made. The director wanted to take it in a different direction, and one of the actors died, during the casting process, and it got derailed. And then they didn't like the rewrites that the people, the really expensive writers, because
Okay.
that wasn't expensive enough. So the really expensive writers who did the rewrite, took it in another different direction, and the whole thing just sort of died. And 2 years later, I'm just out on the streets hustling again for the next gig, which fortunately comes. But it's a constant hustle. So success by these little markers, like it's just you can't relax. I mean, I suppose if you are, in the Aaron Sorkin kind of level, the, the, Carlton Cuse level of writers, like showrunners, people who just have such a track record and a career, and you go, okay, I'm going to keep working as long as I want to,
Mm,
but that's a fraction. That's like, that's what gets people buying lottery tickets. Oh,
right.
well, my neighbor down the block won a lottery ticket. Why can't I win a lottery ticket too? Right. But yeah, so
It's a
for me,
handful of people. Yeah.
it's a handful of people. So success has to be measured on a personal level. It's like if you're feeding your family. For me, success was always economic, right? I didn't
Mm,
get, look, I've been nominated for a bunch of awards. It doesn't mean anything, and I've actually won. One. It doesn't mean. It makes me feel like, oh, I had some recognition of my peers, but it didn't help me keep my kids in school, and it didn't help me feed my family. It didn't help me, give to charity. So it all depends on what your personal value is. Look, there are a lot of people who, you know go to their deathbeds, who, just remember fondly back on past achievements, but didn't create any good out of it. So I don't know. For me, success is if you're able to take a something that you've done in this crazy entertainment business and converted it, from feeling good about yourself to doing good for even just for your immediate circle,
yeah.
then that seems pretty successful to me.
Well, L'chaim, to your ongoing success. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Appreciate it. My pleasure. Lovely speaking with you. Good
Wonderful
seeing you.
Speaking to you too. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Of course, my pleasure.
Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments below. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Subscribe to the channel and check out some more of the videos.